There's a moment quiet, almost imperceptible, when a person realizes that the life they're living is not the life they want. It doesn't come with fireworks or a dramatic breakdown. No, it arrives in silence, like a draft in a sealed room. You're sitting at your desk, or brushing your teeth, or scrolling endlessly through a screen, and then it hits you. This isn't it. But instead of rising, you shrink. Instead of moving, you scroll deeper. Instead of screaming, you tell yourself you'll think about it later. And you don't. Why? Why is it that people can feel the dull ache of meaninglessness, the repetition of self-sabotage, the pain of staying the same, and still resist change with every cell in their body? Why do people say they want to grow, yet run in circles around the same problems? Why does the prison of the known feel safer than the door to freedom? Here's the paradox. Change is the very thing we crave, yet it's the thing we most violently resist. You want to evolve, but evolution demands a death of who you were, of what you believed, of the illusion that comfort is peace, and your ego, that whispering guardian of your fragile identity, will protect your old self, like a mother shielding a child from the flames, even if it means burning with it. Isn't it strange that you can hate your routine, despise your patterns, resent the person you've become, but still protect them, defend them, even worship them in secret? You talk about change like a pilgrim talks about paradise, but when the path opens, when life dares you to step forward, you freeze, because the first step forward isn't a step at all. It's a fall. And who willingly throws themselves off the edge? But what if the edge is the lie? What if the fall is the only real flight you'll ever take? Let's be honest, you already know the advice. You've heard the cliches. Get out of your comfort zone. Just take the leap. Believe in yourself. But none of that touches the core of why you won't, why you can't, why you don't. This isn't about lack of motivation. It's about the psychological scaffolding that holds your entire identity in place. And what would collapse if you let it go? Change is terrifying not because you don't know what to do. It's terrifying because, deep down, you suspect it might actually work. And then what? What happens if you become everything you claim to want? What happens when the pain you've known your whole life disappears, and all that's left is you, raw, unmasked, and entirely responsible? Here's the truth. Most people don't fear failure. They fear transformation, because the moment you change, your excuses die, your stories dissolve, and you're left naked, staring into the mirror of your own becoming. So, the real question isn't how do I change? It's this: are you willing to die in order to live? And with that, the silence returns, heavier now, hungrier. But don't run from it yet, because in the next moment, we'll begin to uncover the roots of this resistance, the deep, hidden machinery of the psyche that binds you to who you were, even as you ache to become something more. The most powerful prisons have no walls, no guards, no locks, just a story you keep telling yourself about who you are. Now ask yourself, when did you begin believing it? Somewhere between childhood and now, a quiet transaction took place. You were born wild, whole, and limitless, but you learned to shrink, to fit, to perform, to survive. You took your dreams and cut them down to size, filed the edges of your desires, and swallowed your instincts until they no longer made you gag. And so, you became functional. But at what cost? Carl Jung called it the persona, the mask we wear to face the world. It is not who you are. It is who you believe others need you to be. And over time, the mask fuses with your skin until you forget it's a mask at all. You think it's you, but it's not. That's the first fracture. The second is deeper, because as you adapt to survive, your shadow begins to grow. Your shadow is every part of you that you rejected to be loved, the rage you swallowed to be nice, the creativity you suppressed to be realistic, the sexuality you buried to be holy, the ambition you silenced to be humble. These are not your flaws, they are your silenced truths. And they don't disappear, they wait, in dreams, in slips of the tongue, in the people who trigger you for no logical reason. Your shadow isn't your enemy, it's your exiled self. But here's where it gets darker. You don't just reject your shadow, you build your entire identity around not being it. Nietzsche said, every profound spirit needs a mask. But most people wear the mask so long, they kill the spirit underneath it. You think you fear change. No, you fear the return of the parts of yourself you locked in the basement, because to change is to let them out, to face them. And that's terrifying. Let's go deeper. Arthur Schopenhauer believed that the will to live is inherently irrational, that our desires torment us, and we chase illusions to escape inner emptiness. So, when you say you want to change, what part of you is speaking? The rational one, or the part that's still clinging to the illusion? You've been conditioned to think in straight lines. Want something gives, work for it gives, get it gives, be happy. But what if the whole system is broken? What if your desire to improve yourself is still just another disguise for the fear of facing who you are without the next goal? Jean-Paul Sartre would tell you that you are condemned to be free, that your very existence burdens you with choice, and in every moment, you are choosing who you become. And yet, freedom terrifies you, because with freedom comes responsibility. There's no one to blame if your life stays the same, not your parents, not society, not your past, just you. But your ego can't tolerate that kind of accountability, so it makes you busy healing, busy planning, busy preparing, but never changing. So, what's really going on? It's not that people don't want to change. It's that they've built their sense of self on staying the same. To change is to admit that everything you believed about who you are, how the world works, what's possible, might be wrong. And most people would rather suffer predictably than risk the chaos of the unknown. But isn't that ironic? You spend your whole life pretending to be someone you're not, just to avoid the terror of becoming who you really are. And yet, deep down, the truth gnaws at you. It shows up as anxiety, as depression, as frustration, symptoms not of laziness or failure, but of spiritual dislocation. You are not where your soul wants to be. So, here's the problem. You think your resistance to change is laziness, but it's not. It's a crisis of identity, and unless you solve that, every effort to improve will collapse under the weight of your own self-preservation. So now we turn toward the mirror, toward the moment when you realize the very structure of your reality is shaped by an identity you didn't consciously choose. But before we look for a way out, we must first see what it's doing to you and to the world around you. You wake up, you brush your teeth, you check your phone, you rush to work, you say you're fine, and yet you're not. You feel the tension in your shoulders, the dull ache in your chest, the unexplainable fatigue. You think it's stress, burnout, maybe you just need a vacation. But vacations don't heal identity wounds. What if the most dangerous thing in your life is not what's happening to you, but what's happening within you quietly, habitually, invisibly? There is a kind of suffering that never screams. It doesn't ask for help. It doesn't bleed or bruise. It blends in. It's the suffering of a person who has betrayed their own becoming. And it's epidemic. Millions of people move through life like sleepwalkers, highly functional, completely disconnected. They succeed in things that don't matter. They chase goals they don't question. They live lives that don't belong to them. And they call it normal. But beneath it all is the quiet war of self-betrayal. Cognitive science has a name for this: cognitive dissonance, the state of holding to contradictory beliefs and pretending they don't conflict. I value freedom, you say, yet you stay in a job that crushes your soul. I believe in growth, you say, yet you sabotage every opportunity to evolve. I want love, you say, yet you run from intimacy because it exposes your wounds. The dissonance isn't just mental, it becomes physical. Your nervous system gets stuck in a loop: fight, flight, freeze, because your body can't lie. It feels the cost of your contradiction, even when your mind denies it. And slowly, the psyche fractures. Aldous Huxley warned of a future not of censorship, but of distraction. A world where people no longer cared about truth, because They were too entertained by illusions. That future is now. You scroll endlessly. You self-medicate with likes, reels, podcasts, porn, alcohol, affirmations. You fill the void with noise. Why? Because silence is dangerous. In silence, you might hear the whisper you've been avoiding. This isn't who you are. But distraction has a price. When you live out of alignment, your life loses meaning. Not instantly, not dramatically, but slowly, incrementally, like erosion. Jean-Paul Sartre said, "Man is nothing else but what he makes of himself." But what happens when you make yourself into what everyone else expects you to be? You may gain approval, even admiration, but you lose something far more sacred, your authenticity. This erosion manifests everywhere, in mental health epidemics, in addiction, not just to substances, but to validation, in relationships built on performance instead of presence, in a society that rewards conformity and punishes introspection. You start to feel anxious, not because something is wrong with you, but because something is wrong with the life you've adapted to. Depression becomes not a chemical imbalance, but a spiritual message: you're out of alignment. And here's the cruelest part. Every time you try to change, to break the pattern, your unconscious pulls you back. Why? Because the brain prioritizes familiarity over happiness, safety over transformation, predictability over truth. Your internal algorithms, the ones shaped by trauma, conditioning, survival, keep replaying the same loops. And unless you disrupt them consciously, they will own you forever. But perhaps the greatest cost of resisting change is this: you forget you have a choice. You start to believe that who you are is fixed, that the life you have is all there is, that the pain you feel is your personality, not your prison. And once you believe that, the sabotage becomes self-sustaining. You surround yourself with people who reinforce the narrative. You dismiss growth as naive or unrealistic. You mistrust anyone who embodies freedom because they threaten the lie you've come to depend on. So the question is not just, why don't people change? It's, what is the cost of not changing? The answer is staggering. You pay in time, in relationships, in purpose, in the quiet ache of days that blur together without depth or direction. And the tragedy, you think it's just life. You think this is normal. You think this is you. But it's not. It's the version of you that grew in the dark, because it was too dangerous to step into the light. And now that you see it, what will you do? You can't unknow this. You can't unsee the cost. But you can break the pattern. And in the next section, that's exactly what we'll do. You feel it now, the tension between who you are and who you were told to be. It's no longer a whisper, it's a roar. But here's the truth you weren't taught. You were never meant to be normal. You were meant to be whole. Breaking free isn't about rebellion for rebellion's sake. It's not about rejecting your past out of resentment or proving someone wrong. It's about returning to yourself. The version of you that existed before fear began its quiet campaign of compromise. But how? How do you dismantle a prison you helped build? The answer isn't loud. It's not in motivational cliches or 5-step checklists. It begins with something radical, something terrifying. Honesty. To break free, you must first tell the truth brutally, relentlessly, courageously, not to others, to yourself. What parts of your life feel like a performance? Which beliefs do you repeat because they make you acceptable, not because they feel true? Whose life are you really living? If you flinch when you ask these questions, good, it means you're close. Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. You've been calling it fate for too long. But once you see the script, you can stop acting. You can choose to rewrite it. And here's where the rebellion begins. 1. Face your shadow. The parts of you you've disowned, the anger, envy, shame, pride, they hold the keys to your liberation. You think they're enemies. They're not. They're exiled parts of your soul begging to be seen, not fixed. Integration, not perfection, is the path to power. 2. Embrace discomfort. Change is not supposed to feel safe. If it does, It's not real change, it's aesthetic rearrangement. Growth begins where your nervous system says, "This is unfamiliar. This is risky. This might kill me." Lean in. That's the threshold. 3. Burn the false gods. Every life revolves around something. Most people orbit fear, validation, or approval. What would happen if you built your life around truth instead? It would cost you. People will leave. You will grieve the version of you that once fit in. But on the other side of that grief is something sacred: sovereignty. Friedrich Nietzsche wrote, "He who has a why to live for can bear almost any how." To reclaim your life, you must find your why. Not the Instagram version, not the job interview version. The raw, unmarketable truth. Ask yourself, what am I willing to suffer for? What truth would I die for? Or better yet, live for? Now listen carefully. You don't need to become someone else. You need to unbecome everything you're not. This is the rebellion. It doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like silence instead of reaction, like quitting the job that numbs you, like saying no to a life that once felt like the only option, like choosing solitude over shallow company, like creating something beautiful with no guarantee it will be seen. It's not glamorous, but it's sacred. And then something strange begins to happen. Your life starts to make sense, not because it becomes easy, but because it becomes yours. You stop apologizing for your depth. You stop performing for approval. You begin to trust the quiet knowing inside you, the one that was there before the world told you who to be. This is not the end of your struggle, but it's the end of your self-betrayal. And that, perhaps, is the greatest act of rebellion in a world built on pretending. You have come this far. You have seen the cost. You have tasted the truth. But there is still one more thing you need to see, the final, shattering realization that ties it all together. And once you see it, you will never be able to return to the illusion. Now, breathe slowly. Let the dust of your rebellion settle. You've confronted the masks, faced the discomfort, broken the patterns. But still, something lingers, a silence that echoes, a question that haunts. If change is possible, why does it still feel so hard? And here is the deepest truth. Because to truly change, you must first die. Not physically, but psychologically, emotionally, spiritually. The self you've known, the identity you've curated, protected, clung to, it must collapse. The you that was built to survive approval, avoid pain, and preserve ego has to be dismantled. And it will feel like death. That's why most people don't change. They aren't afraid of effort. They're afraid of ego death. You might think it's your laziness, your past, your trauma holding you back. But beneath all of it is this: you are terrified to become someone your old self wouldn't recognize. Because that person, the one on the other side of true transformation, threatens everything. Your social circle, your relationships, your dreams, your excuses. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But he also knew that privilege is earned through the fire. It is not easy to destroy the false self. It means letting go of the narrative where you're the victim, or the hero, or the martyr, whatever story you've used to make sense of pain. It means standing naked before the unknown, stripped of identity, with no guarantees, and still walking forward. That's not change. That's rebirth. And rebirth is messy. There's blood. There's mourning. There's a moment when you think, "I've lost everything." And in that moment, something extraordinary happens. You find your soul, not your persona, not your conditioning, not the projection your parents, teachers, and society expected you to become, but your soul, the ancient, knowing part of you that was never lost, only buried. And when you touch it, even for a second, everything changes. You no longer ask, "What should I do?" You begin to ask, "What is true for me?" You no longer seek safety in conformity. You find peace in authenticity. You no longer beg for validation. You embody worth. And from that place, life stops being a problem to solve and becomes a truth to express. This is not self-improvement, it's self-remembrance. And that, my friend, is the truth you were always running from. You were never broken. You were only disconnected from your essence, from your courage, from your wholeness. The pain, it wasn't punishment, it was a call home. And now, you've answered it. So, here's the final paradox. To become your true self, you must let go of everything that isn't you, even if that means walking away from everything that made you feel safe. Especially then, you don't need more advice. You don't need more steps. You need silence, stillness, presence, because in that space, in the quiet after the storm, you'll hear it, the voice that has been whispering your name since the beginning, and it will say, welcome back. Let this not be the end, but the beginning. Burn the old, breathe in the new, and above all, live as if your soul chose this life for a reason, because it did.